Welcome back to the Cineros podcast. It is the third and hopefully final episode of our discussion of the DCEU movies. We are once again joined by Isaac Williamson, and Ray unfortunately cannot be with us today. He is out catching shiny Pokemon for a competition among his friends. But I do have Luke with me again. So, Isaac, Luke, say hello.
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 All right.
Good to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for coming back. And if you guys have not seen the last two episodes of the podcast, we have went through the first 6 movies in the DCEU. We are going to try to get to the final 4 today, which are Shazam, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 1984, and the Snyder Cut. We don't know if we'll get to the Snyder Cut, but we will try. So, we're just going to jump right into things with Shazam. Now, I have only seen the latter half of this movie. I've not seen the opening or the second act. I'm just in the third act. So I will turn it over to you guys to discuss it, and I'll chip in if I can when you guys get to discussing the end. But whoever wants to start talking about Shazam, you can go ahead.
Luke,
Yes.
I'd like to give the honor to you.
Okay, that's great because I have a good amount to say about this movie. And I know it's weird. This is a movie that was very well received by critics, and it made a decent amount of money at the box office when it came out, which it didn't come out, much. It didn't come out very long ago at all. I think 2019, So
Yep,
fairly recent.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, but nobody ever talks about it anymore. And I think that's a shame because I love this movie. I really, really think this movie is pretty fantastic. It was really the first movie in the DCEU, and I watched this before I really truly appreciated Aquaman, because Aquaman was always one of my favorites, but this Shazam was my favorite for a while until I rewatced Aquaman recently, and that overtook it. But Shazam's fantastic in my opinion. First off, I think Zachary Levi as Shazam that's such fantastic casting. That dude is hilarious. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He was in that show Chuck that aired a while back that I didn't watch, but apparently I know a lot of people watched it. It was one of the highest rated shows on ABC for a while. But he's just hilarious, really funny, and he has great chemistry with Jack Dylan Grazer, who plays. He is obviously a child actor who plays his best friend in the movie. They get along very well. They have great chemistry. Also, I've just always kind of liked the Shazam character. I like the idea of like a boy who gets powers, and if he says a magical word, he turns into a grown man superhero. Like, it's ridiculous. It is definitely ridiculous, but it is just so much fun. This is the most MCU feeling movie in the DCEU. This feels closest to an MCU movie out of any of the DCEU movies, in my opinion. Even Aquaman, Aquaman's pretty ridiculous at times, but Aquaman also takes itself pretty seriously at points. This movie just has a ton of fun. Also, some of the CGI in the DCEU, and we've talked about this, a lot of the CGI isn't the best, right? I feel like some of the best examples are in this movie. I think CGI looks pretty good here. The action scenes are very good. I think my favorite thing about this movie, honestly, might be the direction. This is a very well-directed movie, and it was directed by a guy named David F. Sandberg, who is more known for horror. He directed the horror movie Lights Out, and he made Annabelle Creation, which is like the only stomachable Annabelle movie. It's literally the only good one out of those 3, in my opinion. So that was a very inspired choice, and I like when a big studio like this kind of takes a chance on a director who's never made like a big budget superhero film before, and I think it paid off. I think his direction was really solid, and I really think this movie's fantastic. I will say though, it obviously has flaws. It falters a little bit in the third act. It gets a little ridiculous in the third act. So yeah, that would be one of my only flaws with it, is that the third act isn't as strong as the rest of the film. But overall, I really, really like this movie a lot. And I'm glad it did well enough to warrant a sequel. I think a sequel is going to be coming out in a year or two. So yeah, guys, that's my thoughts on Shazam. I probably like it more than most people, but what can I say? I just like a fun, good time at the movies, So I really like this one.
Now, Luke, can I just chip in here? You're mentioning the director, and you said he directed Lights Out. I have not seen the movie version of Lights Out, but the short film, which came out first, is genuinely one of the scariest horror things I've seen. Like, okay, I don't even know if it's like 5 minutes long, but it is genuinely terrifying. That short is fantastic.
Did he direct the short?
He did.
I'm not sure.
Yes, he did.
He did. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, he's a very good horror director. So that's why I was so impressed that he managed to helm a movie like this so well. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I have to say. I know I talked for a while, but this is probably the movie that I had the most to say about out of these. So
it's interesting that you bring up the fact that he was a horror director first, because James Wan, who directed Aquaman, was also a horror director.
Right.
As his roots. I think he did the Saw movies and maybe the Conjuring movies as well.
Mm-hmm. And he directed the first two Insidious movies also.
Yeah. I heard, shout out to Chris Duckman, by the way, Chris Duckman, the movie reviewer on YouTube. He mentioned that he's noticed horror directors make really good action movie directors, because James Wan also did the Fast and the Furious, and it was some of the best Fast and Furious movies.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And another guy, which the movie, like just the overall movie as a whole is not too great in my opinion, but the direction and the visual effects in Doctor Strange are very impressive. And Scott Derrickson directed Doctor Strange, and he made The Exorcism of Emily Rose and Deliver Us from Evil and Sinister and stuff like that. So it's really neat when you see a director who started out making films in a certain genre be able to successfully transition into making, you know what, I want to make a big budget action movie or something. So yeah, I really like that a lot.
I think there's action in Shazam. I don't think there's as much action as let's say Aquaman or, Birds of Prey, which we'll talk about here in a minute. I think it's more of a family movie.
It really is. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I agree with you. It's the closest thing to like a family film in the DCEU. And that's another reason I like it a lot, because when I watched it, there were a good amount of kids in the theater and they all seemed to be having a blast, So
I'll bet they love like the strip club joke.
Oh, well, I love
kids are like, "Hey mom, say, hey mom and dad, what's a strip club?" Ah, shoot, now I got to explain this to my kids. Thanks a lot, movie.
Yeah, well, I like the strip club joke. I thought that was funny, but yeah,
it's a place where you go and eat chicken strips with the whole family. It's a good time.
Yeah.
All right, my thoughts on the movie. I was really excited for this movie, especially when Warner Brothers released their whole slate of movies in like 2012 or 2013 or something. They've canceled most of them, and Shazam was on that list. And Shazam, I knew him as Captain Marvel before they rebranded him, has always been one of my favorite characters, because as a kid, who does not love the idea of you saying a magic word and becoming basically Superman? But what made Shazam really special to me was his morals. The reason that he was chosen to become Captain Marvel / Shazam, keeper of the Rock of Eternity, excuse me. You might be able to tell I've read the comic books, is that he had a pure heart. The wizard Shazam said, all right, this kid is worthy of my powers. He's literally the only one in this time period that is able to have these powers, so I'm going to give it to him. The New 52, which this movie is pretty much based off of, changed that a little bit. They made Billy Batson this jerk, just this horrible child. Like, yeah, he's got a heart under all that gunk that he calls a personality, but they just made him not at all enjoyable. And basically, Billy Batson's like, hey, Wizard Shazam, nobody's good anymore. Like, everyone sucks. And the wizard's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just give you the powers then, because you only kind of suck. And it's just like, what? That's like a betrayal of the character, at least to me. I know I'm in the minority there. So seeing them take this movie with that direction was disappointing. But I was an advocate of this movie. The Rock, interestingly enough, this movie wouldn't exist without Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, because he signed on to play Black Adam like the minute it was announced. He lobbied so much support for it. He's like, hey, we're not going to do a Black Adam movie without Shazam first. And it's pretty amazing because this movie was like on the back burner. It wasn't going to get made, and it changed directions. And I've kept my ear to the ground. I was excited when they announced a director. I was excited when they announced Zachary Levi. That guy's got charisma for days.
He does. Yeah.
So happy he was cast. The controversy was he was too skinny. And I'm like, every superhero actor was always too skinny. Chill out. He bulked up, but I watched the movie in the theaters. I've seen it once, and I was disappointed, but I couldn't be angry because, like you said, Luke, people just had such a good time with it. I didn't care for the direction. I didn't care for Billy Batson's characterization. I prefer my superheroes. I prefer Shazam to be a good, morally upstanding guy, kind of like Superman, but with more childlike wonder. And I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but yeah, it's not my favorite. And but I got the comics to read, and that's just where I'll find my home.
Well, the way it seems like you feel about Shazam in this movie is how I feel about Batman in the first couple movies that he's in the DCEU. Basically, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of what it seems like to me because we both had similar points about each of them, I think. Because I hate how Batman's handled, but for me also, I don't really agree with that. I don't think Billy Batson is a jerk. Yeah, I mean, he can be, he's a kid. He has some flaws. I mean, I get like you can be pure of heart, but have some flaws. So yeah, like, where he doesn't show up at lunch with his buddy, like that's crappy to do to somebody, obviously. But of course, I mean, that's just one part of the movie. And he ends up reconciling with him, and then he goes to lunch with him at the end of the movie. So yeah, I mean, I guess I just don't see it the way you do. I guess that's just difference of opinion, I guess. But I don't really feel like he was a jerk. Just like your average kid, I feel like.
I prefer the wide-eyed optimism that he is in the comics, and it is a difference of opinion, and I can't fault people for enjoying that. It just wasn't my cup of tea. What I did like is the focus on the characters. I agree with you, Luke. I think it is one of the best directed, specifically because of the chemistry of the cast.
Yeah,
they just, oh my goodness, I think it's definitely the best cast interactions, with the family dynamic. It's a very character driven movie, unlike the rest. Man of Steel is pretty character driven, but this one's more family driven. I'm going to agree with you, though. I don't think this one has some of the best visual effects because there's hardly any visual effects in it. They're used very sparingly.
Now, Isaac, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
Have you read many Marvel comics?
Like Marvel Studios comics?
Yeah, like Spider-Man, Iron Man, Avengers, things like that.
Not really, no.
Okay.
I stay towards DC.
Yeah, never mind then. That completely negates the question I was going to ask. I was going to ask if you had read both. I was curious as to which movie franchise, the MCU or the DCEU, which one was more faithful to their comic characters.
Well, I'm going to have to tell you I'm not exactly quite educated enough to answer that question.
Yeah. Because I think the Marvel movies do a good job of keeping the core aspects of the comic characters while giving them enough new traits to like work on film. I've never read any of the DC comics, so I couldn't tell you if that's true for them or not.
Well, I can tell you it's not true for Batman, at least in the first couple movies. He's a lot better in the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, no, not at all. I did know that.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you want to get this moving along, Tyler. Is there any more thoughts on Shazam?
No, I don't think so. Luke, do you have anything else?
Not really. I wish more people, would talk about this movie and think about it more because I really love it. I think it's on HBO Max because most of the DC movies are on HBO Max now. So if you want to check it out, if you want to have a good time, just check it out.
All right. Well, I know I said let's move on, but I got to say that I don't think there's much to talk about other than that it seems like a good family film. It doesn't leave you with much conversation pieces or, when everyone left the theater, it was just, man, that was pretty good, wasn't it? All right.
sometimes you kind of, I don't know. I mean, and this sound like that could be a flaw, but at the same time, sometimes you just kind of need a movie like that.
Yeah,
just
I agree.
you know what I mean?
I wholeheartedly agree.
Okay. And with that, we are going to move on to Birds of Prey. Now, this is another one that I have not seen. And, you know, I meant to get around to seeing it when it was in theaters. And it was like right at the start of the pandemic. And I just ended up missing it. And, you know, I have no motivation to go back and watch it. I've not heard great things about it. Luke, did you review it for 5 Minute Movie Reviews, Luke? I can't remember.
No, I didn't. I did not.
Well, I'll be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on it. As I said, I haven't seen it, so I can't contribute, but go ahead.
Luke, what do you think?
Well, okay, well, yeah, I can. My thing is, like, I've never been more split on a movie than I am about Birds of Prey. There are stuff that I really love, and then there's some stuff that I really hate. Overall, I'd say this movie is just kind of meh. You can watch it and not hate yourself while watching it. The fight scenes are actually really entertaining, I think. They're choreographed pretty well. But, I mean, it's just kind of like a meh type of movie. Like you said, Tyler, you know, you having not watched this really doesn't impact much in the DCEU, at least not yet. Maybe it will when Suicide Squad comes out, when the new Suicide Squad comes out. But, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a meh type experience. I guess I'll kind of get into my problems real quick. I won't talk as much as I did with Shazam. The best part about this movie is Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She's fantastic. I think it's getting to the point with, you know, with like Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, just in the sense that, like, I can't really see anybody else playing this character in live action. I think she's fantastic. And she produced the movie too, so I'm glad that she's not only getting to star in the movie but produce it and oversee the production some. She's great. She was great in Suicide Squad. She was literally the only part of Suicide Squad that I liked, actually. So yeah, and that continues over here. She's very good in the movie. Also, Ewan McGregor is freaking awesome in this. Now, if you want to go from a comic standpoint, and Isaac could probably agree with me, he is absolutely nothing like the Black Mask in the comics, at least to my knowledge. And for me, like, with Batman, since he is such a big character with very well-established ideals, I kind of get more mad when he's kind of done wrong in a movie or stuff has changed. But with a guy like Black Mask, who, let's be honest, is kind of a lower tier Batman villain, I don't really care if they change some stuff about him. He's just, in the movie, he's just pretty much like a sociopathic, wacky guy who's just like very flamboyant. And Ewan McGregor is just having a great time in the role, and he's really fun to watch. Those two actors, Ewan McGregor and Margot Robbie, are the best parts of the movie. And like I said, the fight scenes are really good. And that's basically what I like. The story is borderline horrendous. It's Fetch Quest, the movie, basically. There's a diamond that, these people are going to kill me. So Harley wants to go and find that diamond so they won't kill her. There's a child that's introduced in the movie, Cassandra Cain, who, you know, apologies to her, but the actress did not do a great job. I know she's a child actress, so I mean, you know what, I don't like to be hard on them, but she didn't do too great. But I wish her all the best of luck in the future. But that character is horrendous and not very well written. I thought a lot of the scenes of the actual Birds of Prey together were very tedious and kind of forced. I don't think that this should have been a Birds of Prey movie, because the actual Birds of Prey aren't formed until near the end of the movie. This should have just been Harley Quinn, the movie, and it would have been much better, and could have focused a lot more on that character. Of course, you know, they're all underdeveloped. Of course, you know, Black Canary is kind of a nothing character. Renee Montoya is kind of cool, but she only gets a couple standout moments. The Huntress is really, really entertaining to watch. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I'd like to see a Huntress solo movie because she's really cool. But at the same time, her backstory is thrown out there really fast, and then you don't really learn much more about her. I hope these characters come back in the future, because I feel like these actresses do a good job, and, you know, I'd like to see what else they can do in these next couple of movies. But in this movie, they didn't do it for me. They were kind of wasted. This shouldn't have been a Birds of Prey movie. This should have just been a Harley Quinn movie. But yeah, I mean, watch this movie if you want. It's entertaining, but it's kind of a bleh type of movie. Or not bleh, it's more meh. Just kind of, it's there, you know. So that's really all my thoughts. It's a good movie to have in the background while you're doing other things. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
I agree. I think that this movie really shouldn't have been called Birds of Prey. I think this movie was a box office failure. We'll get that aside. I think it's because A, the pandemic, B, people don't know who the Birds of Prey are unless you're a super mega nerd. So like, Birds of Prey, what the heck is that? And it's an absurdly long title. I think the official title is Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn.
Yeah,
Dude,
it's
just call it.
They're trying to be quirky.
Okay,
just call it Harley Quinn. You'll make much more money that way.
So Luke and I still worked at a movie theater when that movie came out. And well, Luke, you didn't. I did. And we actually tried to fit that entire name on our tickets, and it was one of the funniest things I have ever seen. It looked absolutely absurd. We eventually just shortened it to Birds of Prey, but for like the first weekend, we had the full name on the ticket. It was great.
And that's hilarious. Well, you know, I hadn't seen this movie either until literally the day that we recorded our first video, y'all, because I thought that we would make it through all the videos. You know, I know, foolish. We talk a lot longer than we anticipated. But I watched it that day, and I was expecting not to like it. I even took notes while I was watching. I said, okay, I'm not expecting to like this movie. I don't like movies where the villains are in the forefront. Not my thing. But to my surprise, this movie has, I wouldn't call it a dreadful storyline. I would call it simple. But it knows that. It knows that it's a simple storyline. So it makes up for it with energy in every single scene and just over the top performances. It's very tongue in cheek, I think. Like, people are in on, like, yeah, this movie is ridiculous and it's going to be a blast. And I had a blast. I had a blast watching, what's his name? Ewan McGregor playing Black Mask. Like, Luke, you said it. He's not exactly, he's nothing like his comic counterpart, but
nothing like his comic counterpart. Yeah.
He's hamming it up, and it is such a good time. And the inner dialogue with Harley Quinn, it has the feel of a Guy Ritchie movie, but it's far more colorful and just very quick and snappy. And I found myself having a great time. The action sequences are brilliantly choreographed. The cinematography, the color palette, it's just very aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, maybe the storyline's not dreadful. Maybe that was too harsh of a word. It was simple to the point. It would have been fine if it was simple, but so much focuses on this kid, on Cassandra Cain, and I just did not like her character at all. She was not very well fleshed out. I didn't really think her and Margot Robbie had that great a chemistry. But yeah, another thing I forgot to mention, I like how meta this movie is. You know, Harley Quinn looks at the camera and breaks the fourth wall, and that stuff's really enjoyable. I'm a big Deadpool fan, so he kind of, those movies do pretty much the same thing as this movie. In fact, this movie kind of got a lot of flack when it came out because some people thought that all of the in-jokes and references were too much like Deadpool, and I can definitely see where they're coming from, but I don't know. I didn't mind it.
You see, I hate Deadpool as an idea. I haven't seen the movie, and I all the reasons I explained, you guys know. But I didn't really care for the fourth wall breaks in this movie. I was like, ugh, enough. I think meta humor is played out, but I think it's different when it's narration, or maybe not. Maybe I was just in a good mood when I was watching this movie. The only time I enjoyed when she broke the fourth wall is when it's that shootout in the police station and she is hiding behind like a wall of cocaine bags, and like bullets are going through the cocaine bags, and she looks in the camera and just takes a big old whiff of all the cocaine, and then the action just gets far more intense. That scene is probably, that whole shootout scene is probably my favorite part of the movie.
scene of the movie.
The stunt choreographers of John Wick worked on this movie, which is why they're so good.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah. But beyond that, this movie has nothing of substance. It really is just a turn off your brain, have a good time, and you'll enjoy it if that's what you do.
Now, I have to just real quick hop in and say that the plot, the main plot line of this movie, Harley Quinn is dumped by the Joker, and she's learning to accept herself as an individual and kind of distance herself from him and form her own personality. And I really like that idea because for a long time she's just kind of been pigeonholed as, oh, the Joker's girlfriend, you know. So I like that. However, what's kind of embarrassing is there's a Harley Quinn TV show that I really, really like that follows this exact same basic storyline of her, you know, becoming an individual and trying to form, you know, her own team. And I think the Harley Quinn show does a much better job than the actual film does. And it's kind of funny that they both came out around close to the same time, or I think the show came out a year before. But it's just kind of funny how you have you have a show and a movie that are tackling basically the same subject matter, and the show does it so much better. That's not to say the movie's bad, because like you said, Isaac, I basically pretty much agree on everything in this movie. It's a good time, but the Harley Quinn TV show, I actually think is fantastic. That's just my opinion, though.
I haven't seen the Harley Quinn TV show, but I understand why it would be better. A, because you have more time to flesh out certain storylines in a television show, but also DC is much better with their animated division in nearly every single conceivable way. And that's because there's like writers in charge and it's not so corporate. They're kind of like operating under the wing isn't the term I'm looking for, but they don't have as many people overseeing every single decision as the movies do. And I think that there's more creative freedom in that.
They don't have as many studio restrictions, basically.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Tyler, you've been kind of quiet. You got any thoughts?
I haven't seen this, so I can't really comment on anything. I do want to pose a question, though. So, we mentioned the poor box office numbers for this movie. And while I do think that was caused a little bit by the pandemic, do we think that Harley Quinn as a character is well known enough to lead her own movie?
I think so.
I think yes. If they rebranded it as just Harley Quinn, I think it would have made more money. But also they have the box office draw of Margot Robbie.
Okay, so you guys think that she can continue to lead solo movies if they do choose to do more of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's leading a television show with just her name.
That's true. Okay, cool.
But yeah, like Isaac was saying, you know, this movie shouldn't. There's absolutely no reason that this should have even included the Birds of Prey, let alone being called Birds of Prey. Is really awesome. I'm trying to think. I heard. I'm a big fan of the Pitch Meeting YouTube series. That guy's freaking hilarious. But
Ryan George.
Yeah, dude, he's awesome. But in his pitch meeting for this, he was talking about how, you know, there's a part where he's saying we're going to make a Birds of Prey movie, and he's like, oh, who's this going to focus on? He's like, Harley Quinn, and they're like, oh, I didn't know she was a part of the Birds of Prey. And he's like, she's not. You know, this movie should have probably been called Harley Quinn. Oh, and also Birds of Prey. And that's really how it feels. You know, the movie's biggest flaw was choosing the title Birds of Prey, in my opinion, as far as like box office returns. I really think so. I think if it had just really been about her, it would have done better.
I think keep the story as it is. Obviously, you can nitpick it, but definitely change the title. And if people wanted to see more of the actual Birds of Prey, you know, there's test audiences that will say, hey, we need to see more of this person. Then make a sequel of that. But they so obviously wanted to make more female squad movies, so they wanted to just shoehorn the Birds of Prey in here. Right. You know, Luke, I disagree. I don't think Huntress in this movie is nearly interesting enough to solo her own movie.
Well, it should. Yeah, I mean, she's not interesting as a character. It's just that her backstory sounded entertaining. And, you know, at points I kind of was like, oh, I want to see that movie instead of this one. You know what I mean? Because her backstory is entertaining. I just meant she brought that character was entertaining enough to where I would like to see her have her own film, I guess. Not because she was fleshed out, because she wasn't. So yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
this is a tangent.
I think there's a.
Oh,
go for it.
Go ahead. You can finish your thought. This is a tangent. You can.
I was just gonna say. I think this movie, everything's very energetic, and everyone's in on the joke. You know, they're making fun of Renee Montoya for being the stereotypical '80s action movie cop.
Yeah,
I think it was
love that scene. Yeah, that was a good scene.
I think this is one of the movies. This is part of the fallout of the DCEU under Warner Brothers, because they're floundering on what direction their movie should go. I mean, Shazam, the Snyder movies, and this movie, they all have different vibes. And Joker, you know, they've all got different vibes, so they're all over the place. So it's going to be hit and miss. But that's all I got to say. What's your tangent, Tyler?
I was going to ask Luke, have you ever watched Ryan George's solo YouTube channel?
Yes, dude, I love it.
He's so funny. His comedic timing every time is perfect.
He's so funny, and he's actually, when you think about it, he's actually a very good actor, because
he's acting with himself.
Right. To be able to act with yourself and to make these different characters feel like actual different people, that's a sign of a good actor. So it'd be nice to act, if he's probably just fine doing YouTube, because he makes money that way and everybody loves him. But if he was in a movie, like a comedy movie or something, I feel like he could do pretty well,
All right, Luke, I think me and Tyler ought to pitch in and get you a t-shirt that just says, "It's super easy, barely an inconvenience."
Yes, dude, I would wear that. I would wear that all the time.
I'm pretty sure he sells those.
He does.
Yeah.
He has merch.
Yeah. We'll look into the cost. We'll see if we can expense it on our taxes. As a business expense.
Y'all want to talk about what's next? Wonder Woman 84? Is that what's next?
Yep.
Oh, good stuff.
Tyler, I want you to start with this one.
Yes, I've actually seen this one. So, all right, let me talk about this one. So, if you guys watched last episode, you will know that I have an immense hatred of the first Wonder Woman. That hatred does not carry over to the sequel. While the sequel is not perfect, I would give it about a 7 out of 10. It is drastically improved from its predecessor. I will say, again, I thought the ending was the weakest part of the movie. I thought the movie was a bit too long. I felt like it was about half an hour too long. I felt you could have cut out every single scene with Cheetah in it. Her name's Cheetah, right? The villain?
Yeah.
You could have cut out every single scene with her in it. Her character was by far, I think, the weakest part of the movie in terms of the acting and just story in general. But aside from that, it carried over the parts I liked from the original Wonder Woman. It was very fun. The acting was pretty good. The CGI was pretty good. And overall, the reason it was such an improvement is because there was nothing really in this movie that made me despise it like there was in the first one. My expectations going into it were incredibly low, knowing how much I disliked the first one. And I was kind of impressed with how decent it was. I think Gal Gadot is still perfect casting for Wonder Woman. I love Chris Pine in his role. His name has escaped me. Who plays the villain?
Steve Trevor.
No.
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal. Yeah, Pedro Pascal. I liked his acting, but his costume, and especially his wig, I think it looked a little ridiculous, but his acting more than made up for the bad performance. Going off from DC, I'm hoping Woody Harrelson's acting as Carnage in Venom 2 is going to make up for his ridiculous costume, but we'll see. Yeah, overall, I thought Wonder Woman 84 was an improvement on its predecessor. I thought the acting was pretty good. There were some minor things that could have been changed. Like, I don't think the movie needed 2 villains. I think you could have taken Cheetah out. Could have been a little shorter. And then the ending could have been a little less campy. And I think you could have had a really kind of special, maybe 9 out of 10 movie. But I think the way it is, I think I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I enjoyed it. I would watch it again if it was on. It isn't something I would turn off. I definitely think it is one of the better DCEU movies that I've seen. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got.
Well, I'm worried for the state of the DCEU, Tyler, if you think this is one of the best movies in the bunch.
Well, you see, I haven't seen as many of them as you all have. So of the ones I've seen, I enjoyed it a relatively amount.
Yeah, I think I know Luke's thoughts on this. He did a 5-minute movie reviews a couple months back when it came out. But I'm in the camp that did not like this movie. I think it's very mediocre, below mediocre. I think it's watchable, but I think if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, you say, "Hey, wait a minute, that's stupid. That's dumb."
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I kind of like. I'm a mix of both of you guys. You know, I think I like it a little bit more than the first Wonder Woman, but I also like the first Wonder Woman, so I think it's pretty close. But I'd kind of give the edge to this one. But yeah, I think, you know, there are a lot of dumb things in this movie. I mean, obviously, it's a flawed movie. There's a lot of weird stuff. A lot, especially, you know, a lot of the stuff with the shoot, what's it called? The Dreamstone becomes a little convoluted and stupid, you know, especially the way that Steve Trevor comes back in the body of some other guy is pretty creepy and a little weird.
Highly problematic. That's a bad thing.
That is bad.
Oh, I forgot to mention that. That was
bizarre.
I think, Isaac, when you take a second to think about it, it becomes very disturbing very quickly.
It does.
See?
Yeah, it does. No, I totally agree. But for me, the good things in this movie make up for it. Like basically everything Tyler said. I really like Gal Gadot in this role. I think she's awesome. The scene of her like breaking down crying when she realized, you know, she has to move on from Steve Trevor finally and let him go. She's fantastic in that scene. And overall, she is really good in the role. You know, I've always liked her as this character, and she does good again. Her and Chris Pine have great chemistry, and it was fun to see him back. He didn't need to be in this movie. It was, you know, he definitely could have not been in this movie, but, you know, I mean, more Pine is better. You know, I mean, everybody likes Chris Pine. I think Max Lord actually really like him as a villain. He's one of my favorite DCEU villains, which that's not, you know, there's not too many good ones of those. So I know the bar isn't very high. But I think he's really great. Pedro Pascal, like Tyler said, does great in the movie, a little over the top sometimes, but, you know, he's just hamming it up. And but I actually think, you know, his dramatic moments were very effective also. Yeah, I agree with Tyler that Cheetah is by far the worst part of the movie. She is horrendous. Kristen Wiig, I think, is very talented and very funny. I've always loved her on SNL and other things she's been in. But yeah, a miscast for sure. And this character shouldn't have been in the movie. I know they need somebody in the movie for her to fight because, you know, she can't really fight Max Lord. You know what I mean? That'd be pretty one-sided fight. So, but yeah, so I mean, I get why she was in it, but she was pretty horrendous. Easily the worst part. Yeah, I mean,
can I just say
some of the, yeah, go ahead.
I mentioned that I didn't like the costuming on Pedro Pascal's character. The costuming on Cheetah was atrocious.
Yep, yeah.
I don't know if I have ever seen a worse outfit in a comic book movie. That was awful.
The scene where she shows up for the, you know, when she has her final transformation, I laughed. Like, it was ridiculous. It was so bad.
Like, and I know, like, watching the trailer, like they showed that scene and it looked bad, but I just kind of had in the back of my head a hope that, like, maybe they'll realize how ridiculous it looks and they just fix it in post before the movie comes out. Yeah, they didn't.
No,
the worst scene in the entire movie is that fight scene. It's horrendous. That's easily my least favorite scene.
Oh, yeah. Same. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I pretty much agree with Tyler for the most part. Yeah, it has a lot of flaws, a lot of weird, very problematic stuff that I kind of feel weird even getting into. It's very disturbing when you think about it. But you know what? Overall, as a film, I had a good time, and there's enough good stuff here to keep it above average for me. So yeah, I think I literally gave it, because Tyler said a 7 out of 10. I think in my review I literally gave it a 7 out of 10. So yeah, that's how I feel.
I don't know if I could give it a number rating. I guess I could sum it up in a phrase. You know, when I started, it's very watchable. I'll say that. I didn't not enjoy watching it, but I was watching it and saying, "Oh, this is dumb. This is it's so stupid." Like the very beginning scene in Themyscira did not need to be there. There's so much that just didn't need to be here. But the scene where we see Wonder Woman in action for the first time, I was like, okay, this is going to be really campy fun. And it is. But this movie, there are some scenes in it, and with the color palette especially, which is nice and vibrant, but sometimes the tone and the look of the movie feels like Hollywood released a Hallmark movie. Like they gave this to a Hallmark director and said, hey, do the same thing, but with a superhero.
I've heard that said before, that it looks like a Hallmark movie sometimes.
Even the scene at the end when she says goodbye to the dude that Chris Pine's character, Steve Trevor, like embodies him, like absorbs his body or something. It's weird.
That scene did not need to be in the movie.
No. But okay, that literally looked like a Hallmark movie scene, and
it did.
It's so funny because the actor who is billed as handsome man is literally a Hallmark actor. So they knew it. They knew this movie's a Hallmark movie.
That's honestly hilarious.
Yeah. But you said everything I have to say, between the both of you.
Gotcha. Right. Yeah, I mean, this movie is a lot of weird stuff in it. I don't know why they did some of the things they did. But yeah, I mean, I liked it. I thought it was pretty good.
Oh, wait a minute. The CGI. We didn't talk about CGI. It is dreadful. In nearly every scene, it's dreadful.
Well, it's definitely bad on Cheetah for sure.
Okay.
And it's definitely weak on the ending scene where everything's flying around the room. But other than that, I didn't think it was that bad.
All right, Tyler, go and watch the highway battle when they're in the Middle East or something.
Okay, I will do that.
And tell me that the CGI and wire work is good, because there's a scene where she's running next to a car or something, and oh my goodness. Like she does not even look like she's running next to a car. It's dreadful. But yeah, that's all I got.
All right, and with that, we will move on to the final film up to this point in the DCEU. Zack Snyder's Justice League cuts. Now, this is yet another one that I have not seen. I have not seen the original Justice League nor the Snyder cut, mainly because I cannot be bothered to sit through 4 hours of a movie I don't think I'm going to like. But I know that you two both, I think, have a fair amount to say about it. So maybe you can just start by, why is this a superior version than the first Justice League?
Well, Isaac, I'll let you go ahead, because I know you have a lot of good thoughts about this movie, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, when Luke reached out to me, I think it was a couple months ago now, and said, "What do you want to talk about on the podcast?" The Snyder Cut had just been released, and I was on the Snyder Cut high. I was like, dude, we gotta talk about the DC movies. We gotta talk about the Snyder Cut. It's so good. I've seen it twice. I've seen it in the original, like colored edition, and then I watched it in the black and white edition. I watched it like the second day it came out, so I was part of the servers crash that HBO experienced that weekend.
Yeah.
And me and my siblings watched it all 4 hours. So we were up until 1 a.m. Great stuff. But why is it superior? It's superior because it completes it. It just makes a better movie. It's not disconjoined like the original Justice League was, or the theatrical cut, as I'll say, because the Snyder Cut's actually the original cut. It's not excuse me, I'm tripping over my words. It's not discombobulated would be a good word to put it. It completes the character arc of Batman that he went through between this movie and BVS. Wonder Woman is treated a lot more fairly. It's not a joke. The movie's just not a straight up joke. There's more time for the characters to be fleshed out. The scenes make more sense. Luke, you mentioned Batman is treated a lot better, and he is.
Yeah.
The CGI is so much better. Steppenwolf, good gracious, is an actual character and not just a foil. In every conceivable way, beyond sucking, this movie is superior to the Whedon cut. The only thing bad I've heard people say about it is the fact that it's 4 hours long, and a nitpick would be Wonder Woman's theme song, which I really love. I think it's really great.
Yeah,
I think Wonder Woman's new theme song is epic. It's really great. And the length doesn't bother me for a couple of reasons. Before I get into that, I want to give Luke a chance to talk.
Well, I agree with a lot of what you said. This is definitely on the upper tier of DCEU movies, and it is about 10 million times better than the original Justice League. It's not even a contest. This is so much better. There's a lot to like. Basically Batman's character arc is in this movie is, oh man, I've been a murderous, crazy person for the past several movies, and he's trying to like make up for it. And I think that's awesome. I think that it lines up more with Batman in the comics. And I really like this interpretation of the character. Superman is underutilized, but I mean, he wasn't really in the first one very much anyway. So it makes sense. He gets a little bit more to do here.
He was dead most of the movie.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's not in it much, but when he's there, he does a pretty good job. I've never really liked Henry Cavill as the character. But this is one of his more tolerable roles, or performances in these movies. And yeah, I mean, I will say though that I think a lot of people I have a friend who this is one of his favorite superhero movies, and I definitely can't get behind that. I really like it. It's really good. I really enjoy it. It'd probably be like a 7 out of 10 for me. 7.5 out of 10. I really like it, but there are some problems I have. First off, the 4 hour runtime, I definitely disagree with Isaac. I think that is absurd. There are tons of scenes that do not need to be here. And people could argue, well, it gives Cyborg more chances to shine. No, keep all that stuff in. That stuff's great. Cyborg is easily my favorite character in the movie, by the way. Ray Fisher's fantastic. But the length of this movie is absurd. There's all kinds of little tiny scenes that don't need to be there. There's a repeated line when Steppenwolf is talking to Darkseid 2 different times. He repeats the same thing 2 different times in 2 different scenes that are almost identical. And I'm just like, well, that didn't need to be there. And there's,
what's he saying?
I don't remember the exact line. He said they're looking for the third, I think, when he's talking to when he's talking about his parademons. But he says that twice, like an hour apart. It's like, again, that's something small, but I mean, there are some people who just think this is the best movie ever. So I'd like to point out its flaws a little, but I know a lot of them are nitpicks. But I think the runtime is, there's stuff like that. There's that whole scene with that coastal town singing. And then Aquaman shows up. I think that was pointless to me. I didn't like that scene very much. The scene where Flash is running in slow motion and he sees Iris, and it's borderline kind of creepy. There's way too much slow motion in this movie. It is a Zack Snyder movie, so it has a lot of his typical trademarks. A lot of slow motion type stuff. There's the scene that is honestly pretty cool overall, where Wonder Woman breaks into, I think it's like a bank or something, and saves all those people. That's a really awesome scene. The only part that's odd is that Wonder Woman has been shown to clearly value life. And she just freaking obliterates that last goon. I mean, she blows up a side of that building and kills him. And I'm just like, whoa, hold up now. This doesn't line up with her character. Again, that's one scene in the movie, but I'm just like, what? Because in the original cut, I think she just like lassos him or something. But in this one, Zack Snyder was like, no, man, explosions. So, I mean, I was just like, that's not a big deal. But I was like, oh, well, that's weird. But I'm trying to think of some other things. I think you kind of overestimate a little, or I think you kind of overstate a little bit about Steppenwolf. You know, they give him a motivation, because in the first one, he literally had no motivation. In this one, he has a motivation. It's that Darkseid treats him like dirt, and he owes Darkseid a bunch of planets, so he has to make that debt up. And it almost makes you feel like, Steppenwolf is a murderous, crazy, evil being, but man, his boss treats him bad. I can relate to that, you know. So yeah, I mean, they give him a little bit more, and he's definitely a lot better in this movie than the other one. But he's still not a good character. I just don't think so.
I have to disagree. And to be honest, I could talk about this movie for an entire podcast. You know, I think I'll do an entire video essay on it. So I don't want to keep this going for like another hour, because I could. But I want to address your concern with, or your nitpick of, or critique of the 4-hour runtime. If this movie was to be released in theaters like it was meant to be, I would argue it would not be 4 hours. You know, I don't think a lot of the lingering shots, or some of the shots that didn't have to be there, they wouldn't be in the movie. Because this movie is a direct to streaming service and a 5-year-long labor of love for the fans that campaigned really hard for it to exist, and Zack Snyder, who really got screwed over by WB and by life in general. It's a labor of love, and it should be judged differently. I think he says, okay, the fans wanted to make this happen. I've wanted to make this happen since 2015 or whenever they started to film it. Why not put everything I want in it? And he did. And people are nitpicking, but it's definitely the movie that he wanted to make. And he said, I'm pulling no punches. I'm going to put every single thing I want in there. Some of it is admittedly like, all right, that was weird. But like the scene where this dude drops a hamburger and we zero in on a sesame seed, that was kind of strange. But, you know, it doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie. And if it bothers you that much, the length, there are chapter dividers that you can break it up and watch it over the span of 1 week.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I definitely disagree, because I've tried to do that and I couldn't. It doesn't flow correctly. It's not because it's kind of, you know, there are a lot of unnecessary scenes, but I don't really think it's a nitpick to say that I just think, you know, all the stuff's too long. I understand what you're saying. And I really love the fact that Zack Snyder was able to just put whatever he wanted in it. That's really awesome. At the same time, though, I still think it's fair to critique when things don't need to be there. Like Martian Manhunter definitely didn't need to be in this movie. You could have kept in the scene of him coming to Batman at the end. That was cool. I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of neat. But the scene where I think like Diane Lane shows up as Martha Kent, you know, you think it's Martha Kent, and then, you know, they walk away and, oh, Martian Manhunter was actually in disguise as Martha Kent. That was very unnecessary, in my opinion, and a pretty horrible introduction for that character. Yeah, I don't. And that's the thing. Like, for people who argue that this movie, there's chapter dividers. I mean, sure, there are, but the movie still doesn't flow correctly. You know, it's not made to be broken up. It's just the stuff that is there. It's just, you know, for me, it's just too long. And that's just difference of opinion. I mean, obviously, you know, like I said, I respect Zack Snyder as a filmmaker. All of his usual filmmaking flaws, you know, his films are typically too long and a lot of, you know, there's a lot of slow motion. And, you know, I mean, this isn't going to like win you over, I don't think, if you didn't like Zack Snyder before. But I mean, I like the movie. That's just, you know, I just don't think it's a nitpick to say that, you know, to point out that there were a lot of things that didn't need to be in it. That scene with the Joker at the end definitely didn't need to be there either. And it's sad because all of this seems to me like if it was included if Zack Snyder was able to put this out when he wanted to, and Joss Whedon never came in, and the family tragedy he had didn't happen, then I think this would have been a lot better, and they could have gotten a sequel. I don't think they'll get a sequel. That's just my opinion. I know everybody's campaigning for it. And it's kind of sad watching this because all of these extra scenes of like Martian Manhunter and everybody's almost, to me, like sequel setup. But unfortunately, the way history turned out and the way he got screwed over, that's not going to happen. So we're kind of left with just something that's neat that they put him in there. But at a point, it becomes like fan service, the movie at times. So I just, again, like I totally get where you're coming from. I really like this movie, but there are flaws that I think people need to talk about because there are some people who just think that this is the greatest movie ever. That's just kind of how I feel.
Well, I don't see how the pointing out the flaws would change anything because they're not restoring the Snyderverse. The movie's already been made. People have campaigned for it for years. Pointing out the flaws nowadays really just robs people of the satisfaction of the movie coming out because Snyder's not doing any more superhero movies with WB, and WB is definitely not going to go back to his direction or his vibe of the other movies.
Well, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's a movie. So I mean, pointing out his flaws, in my opinion, is necessary, I think. But here's the thing, just with any film criticism, my thoughts shouldn't make somebody who is entertained by the movie, change their mind. If you, like you said, if you're one of those people who, and I assume you are, that, Zack Snyder, you love that he got to put all this stuff in the movie and everything. And it's a labor of love by him, which I agree with. Then, yeah, I mean, you should be able to really enjoy it. But also, I should be able to point out the flaws with it as well. But I mean, I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah, fair. I want to point out I'm not a Snyder fanboy. I'm a fan of his work, not his zombie movies, but his superhero movies. And
see, I think those are his best movies. That's just me, though. That's just a personal taste.
Yeah, I like his superhero movies, and Luke, I actually like Guardians of the Gahul. I thought that was a pretty good movie. I know that you did a.
Yeah, I mean,
I have not heard Guardians of Gahul in about a decade. Man, that movie's. Yeah. I agree with you. That movie's actually pretty decent. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And so I know that he's not above reproach, but his style resonates with so many people, and so many people are fans of his. And he's a really respectable guy and a really nice dude, and I really enjoy him. But I wanted the Snyder Cut to be released just so the director's vision could be realized, and it was a better superhero movie in general. But I'm not going to do the whole restore the Snyderverse thing because it just wasn't working the way it should have. Yeah. I think that DC's movies, they need to stop flip-flopping. And while I enjoy Man of Steel, BVS, and the Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, I don't think that that's what DC should be doing with their movies. I don't think they should be doing what Marvel's doing. I think it should be different in tone. But, I don't have the answers. But what I would think would be cool if people really want to see where Snyder's movies would have done, where it would have gone, is to make them animated. Keep the same style, tone, but lower the budget and make them animated. That way you don't have to worry about it being theatrical and you'd still get to see stories played out.
I mean, in my opinion, this is just me. I've liked the fact that for the most part over the past couple of years that DC's animated stuff has been able to focus more on, your core characters and flesh that stuff out. And how the live action movies were actually taking risks. I mean, say what you will about those movies, but we actually have a Shazam and a Birds of Prey movie. That's kind of nuts to think about, especially, there was a point in my life where I never thought an Avengers movie was possible. As a kid, I was always like, well, that's too many people to put in a movie. And then when they made that, I was like, this is nuts. And then they made an Ant-Man movie, and I'm talking about Marvel, but it's just neat that these studios are taking chances. Obviously, in Birds of Prey's case, it didn't pan out, But I like the fact that they're not afraid to get weird, and I also like the fact that I think they should kind of keep up what they're doing at this point. You had a plan, it got royally screwed up, and now I think you should just kind of roll with it. You should just, they're putting out like the Suicide Squad movie, which I think looks like an absolute blast. Probably one of my most anticipated movies of this year for sure. But at the same time, I love the DC animated movies, and I love how they just pump those things out, and they're basically always at least quality. They're always at least pretty good to very good, and they can explore a lot of these storylines that people who are fans of the Snyder Cut and fans of Justice League would like to see. So I'm kind of with you. I think that they should kind of just keep doing what they're doing, because restoring the Snyderverse at this point would kind of mess up everything that's going on right now. And while it would be cool to see that stuff, I think that the Snyder Cut just kind of serves as, just something that a lot of people wanted to see. And my personal favorite thing about the Snyder Cut is that HBO Max actually released it. I think that is fantastic. That's probably my favorite thing. That's my favorite thing about the whole movie. In other cases, that'd be like, your favorite thing about the movie is that it came out, it must have sucked. And that's not the case with this movie at all. I just really like that they took a chance on it and put this out here. Say what you will about the DC movies, they're not afraid to take chances on stuff. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think you should restore the Snyderverse at this point. I think it's too late, in my opinion.
I think the Snyderverse, send out a comic book, at the very least a comic book, or a animated movies to be released on HBO Max as well. I was hashtagging release the Snyder Cut when the original the Whedon cut of Justice League came out. I was ecstatic when it was announced that it was coming out. I was really looking forward to it, sitting on pins and needles when it was like a month away and a week away and all that good stuff. And I watched it in one night, and I was sad when it was over. Honestly, I didn't feel like, man, this movie's too long. I was excited to go back into the world that Zack Snyder's direction took me, and was sad that it was cut short. And when I had a chance to step back in it again, I leapt at it and was sad when it was over. My first thought was, man, I could have kept watching it just because I was just having such a good time.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I love that people had that experience. And I also like that, it's me who, someone like me who, aside from Batman, is a casual DC fan and, not the biggest Zack Snyder fan. I was pleasantly surprised. I expected this movie to not be very good. I know that sounds kind of mean in retrospect, but, the DCEU's track record, especially with the Justice League characters, have not been good. So I just expected this to not be good, because I also didn't like Zack Snyder's previous two DCEU movies at all. But I was pleasantly surprised that this movie is actually really good. I love that the villains win, at least for a second. How cool is that? Like, it actually gets destroyed. Like, they actually win for a sec, and it plays out to make you think, are they going to end this here and be very dark? But I think this is the best scene that Ezra Miller has had as the Flash in these movies, where he goes back and reverses time. And I love that in the first movie, Flash basically just ran around and didn't do anything. In the Joss Whedon cut, that he didn't do really anything of substance. And in this movie, he saves the day. And I really love that. I think Cyborg is my favorite character in the movie, but honestly, and I didn't like him before, but Ezra Miller's Flash is probably my second favorite. Those two and Batman are definitely the standouts for me. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. It has flaws, and I wanted to point them out just because I feel like it's good to acknowledge the flaws and things sometimes, but at the same time, that shouldn't take away from anyone's enjoyment. That's not my goal. Not my goal with reviewing any. That's not my goal with any movie. When I review it, to take away from people's enjoyment. My goal is, I want to share my opinion, and hopefully some people are interested in hearing it, but yeah, I mean, if people had a great time with this, and I did too, and yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I like it as well. I think it's a really great time. And like I said, I could do a whole video essay on this, and I probably will. So stay tuned for that. But I got a question to ask the two of you. Tyler, how are we doing on time?
We are at 1 hour and 4 minutes currently.
Okay. Well, then I'll save that question for another time then, because it might lead us into a longer chat.
Okay. Do we have any final thoughts on the Snyder Cut?
If you liked... Excuse me, Luke. Go ahead.
Sorry, my bad. No, I'll just be very brief. Like I said, to kind of summarize all I said, it's flawed, but I also really love that this exists, and I love that it's so much better than the original Justice League, and it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, so I highly recommend.
All right.
I think the Snyder Cut is, if you enjoyed or liked Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, you're really going to like this one. I think it's one of the greatest comic book movies. It's a completely different vibe than the other ones. It's like cinematic mythology. These superheroes are treated like gods. If you're into that, go for it. If you're not, watch Birds of Prey.
Okay, cool. And with that, our 3-part video series on analyzing the DCEU films has drawn to a close. Thank you, Isaac, for appearing on all the videos. We do have, I think, one more main podcast episode I want to do with you in the future, as well as you do appear on the first series of Guess That Score, which will be coming out very soon. Do you have anything to say to the audience?
Cinebros, I appreciate you having me on. Audience, I appreciate you listening. Go check out my YouTube channel as well. Luke's had an appearance on there as well, reacting to a trailer with me. The YouTube channel is just Isaac Williamson. If you want, follow me on Instagram at _Zacaman_. Zacaman spelled Zacaman. And be looking forward to more videos I'll be putting out soon.
All right, Luke.
Guys, thank you as always for watching. Isaac, it's been a pleasure, man. I love the fact that since I've started, we started doing YouTube, that we've met so many people, so many awesome people that we wouldn't have been able to meet if we hadn't started doing this. So I think that's one of my favorite parts of making YouTube videos, is that the people you meet. So Isaac, thanks for being on here, man. But yeah, guys, if you want to check out some of my stuff, you can be on this exact same channel and check out my series on this channel, 5-Minute Movie Reviews. I got a lot of reviews coming out in pretty quick succession pretty soon, so be on the lookout for those. Guys, thank you as always for watching. I will see you all next time.
All right. And if you enjoy the podcast, you can find us at Cinebros Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure you click subscribe on the YouTube channel if you haven't already. And with that, we will see you. Bye.